So I started teaching in the middle school at Indianola, and they were not one-to-one, but they did have a portable lab we could bring into the classroom. And I noticed instantly the engagement factor in my middle school students changing drastically from maybe being cued out, not paying attention, to put that computer in front of them and they were doing what they needed to be. They were excited about it. They were intrigued with what they were doing. Now, with math in particular, that engagement piece is huge. Getting students to buy into math is sometimes challenging at any level, middle school and high school especially. So bringing that computer in bits and pieces was really powerful then, but I didn't have the training to know how or always when or exactly that purpose, that why I was doing it. And then I transitioned to the high school a couple of years after that, and it is a one-to-one environment. And so the computer just became a very big piece of my classroom. And I wanted to be a little bit more purposeful with how I was implementing that into the classroom. So then when the blend flip came around, I did jump on board for the reason of using it inside of my classroom, not necessarily creating content for outside of the classroom, but finding ways to infuse it more, like I said, more purposefully, more in line with what I'm wanting to get out of the students. Come away with kind of finding pieces from the blend flip learning and also just from my own experiences that I'm able to pull into my classroom in a very consistent manner, which I think has helped students know what to expect and how to get into a rhythm of how to use the technology effectively. So yes, every day we start with an online component that has a lot of formative elements to it where they can check their understanding of either what they've been doing in the past or something that they did yesterday. So every day they come into the classroom and they start their day like that. And those resources that I found for that Begin at Bell activity came from some of the resources I found within the blend flip class. And then also just things that I've continued to search for. Bringing in that formative element at the beginning of the day was really powerful. Honestly, I think the biggest takeaway is being able to put the power in the kids' hands more so than I could any other time. So it was very much a student-driven classroom without the computer, but it became not just a student-driven classroom, but a classroom that the students had the power to be able to decide what they know, what they don't know, what they need next, and then what to do about that. And so that was huge because before the computer, I had students collaborating, students working together, but they didn't know what the answers were always. And so they didn't know if they were doing it right, or they didn't know what they should be doing if they were getting it wrong, or where they should go to if they were getting it wrong. And now with the computer, I have the answers in front of them. The students get to know right away if they're right or not. They have resources. If they understand the question, they go on to this. If they don't, they can watch this video. It's just been extremely powerful to watch the students take on their own learning in a big way. It's been really neat. I do have videos prepped that I have made or that I have found, which is obviously a very big piece of absenteeism. If students are gone, they can watch those. I am working to create more of that because I don't feel like I'm a true blend flip classroom. I'm more of a station rotation classroom. But as far as students being gone, I can say, log in, try this. This is what we did today, so you can see it on the computer. And I do have videos that I pull from other resources, but they aren't the same ones that we've used in the classroom that day. So for sure, just the coursework that I was in throughout the blend flip 1, 2, 3, and 4 just got you thinking about things that maybe you just wouldn't always think about, or again, offered the resources that were powerful, or at least places to continue to look. It inspired more questions. You have this knowledge, but it created this question. So that was a big part of it. I also think some of it has been self-taught, trial and error, which that isn't something that you can gain from a classroom. You just have to try some things out. This year, I was able to be a part of the collaboration and innovation teacher team at Indianola, which allowed for a period a day to try and figure out some new strategies to implement in the classroom. And so I've really dug into that, coming up with more time to spend preparing different things to try in the classroom based off of some of the things I learned in the coursework, and then, just pieces that you pick up here and there. In our building, we have a period a day designated to try and implement new strategies around a goal area that we've selected at the beginning of the year. So mine was specifically student engagement through technology or just through technology or collaboration, because I've wanted to build both of those pieces within my classroom. And so that's been pretty awesome. There's a group of 5 of us that have 4th hour open. Now that I say 5, maybe there are 6 of us. So English, one from each core area. There's one from band that he's joining us to. But we meet once formally a week, and then sometimes 2 or 3 times otherwise. But otherwise, that one period is meant to be, we have a goal that we've stated. We have somebody that follows up with us. We have action steps required out of us. They begin every day on the computers with a quick, it's called a begin at bell activity. And it's always something there are a lot of quirky little games for math. And in the lower level, it's really easy to find things where today they were doing greatest common factor fruit shoot. And it's a game where they're practicing greatest common factor. And so I pull a lot of games at the beginning of the period. There's lots of websites like Kuya, where you have to win $1 million and you step it up. And I have little prizes like candy or something. So there's always like a hook at the beginning, but it's online where it's formatively assessing what they know, prior knowledge, or what they did the day before. And then after that, depends on the day. Sometimes there's a short lesson, but as far as, videoing that element, I don't have that embedded, but it's a short lesson, teacher driven. But then the students are in pods. So it will be a 10-minute lesson at most. And then they're set up in pods of 4. And usually I switch their pods of 4 around based on data that I've collected, either sometimes by the entrance ticket or by previous days of work. And then they are assigned a task to work on. So sometimes that task, if I have a smaller group that needs retaught, will work with me on that reteaching piece during that time. The other pods are working on the assignment, which is all online. So they're able to tell if they're getting it right or not. They're communicating. I've worked really hard this year on forcing, they're better at it, the communication between the pods. It is a active assignment rather than you're sitting in front of the computer doing it yourself. Because I think if anything, that's the one thing I want to avoid. That element is really important in the classroom. So it's, I got this right. What did you get? How did you get that? There's the conversations that have come out this year have been awesome. I've just been really inspired by the students working together that way. And the program that we use actually provides different numbers for students. So I could get mine right, but I can't just tell the student next to me, hey, the answer is 12. They have to get the students' how-to process, and they have to describe that to each other. So it's been really neat. So they'll spend a lot of time doing that. And then the station rotation element that I've built into some of my groups will be where I'm doing a small mini lesson with one group. One group's on the computer, and then one group's on a worksheet. And then we'll station rotation and we'll move, and the next group will have a mini lesson. And then you're on the computer. And so it's different every time, but the goal is when you walk in, you'll see some technology every day. Some days lots, some days maybe not as much. And then you'll also see groups working together always. I've got a lot to learn still with it. I'd say it's going very successfully in some of my classes, and in other of my classes I need to beef it up a little bit. I do think one of the pieces I aim to be a little bit more successful with next year will be to try to find videos that I like, or create my own videos so that I can embed those a little bit. But it's very, very timely, and my focus wasn't on that this year. So next year I might put my focus and energy there. Well, I think the biggest thing is that students are self-assessing all the time, understanding what they know, what they don't know, and what to do about it. And so I expect kids to try, first of all. If they get it right, great. Help explain it to a neighbor, move on. I have extension activities that are built in. So students need to not just take their learning win and be done for the day, but they have to then log in and do some extension activities because they felt like they understood that. I mean, that's ownership that you can't give a student. I mean, you can teach them to take that ownership. And I think this allows me to do that they determine where they're at in the objective and the learning, and then take that, either extending it or asking questions. And students they are asking questions all the time, either from their partner or from me. I mean, it's a constant buzz of, I don't get this. Why did you get that? How can I get that? So then that student who still can't understand it or still doesn't get their questions answered, to know that they need some remediation. And that's provided too on Power School, but it's the student who has to decide that, like the student has to come upon that themselves. I think oftentimes when they hear from a teacher, it's not as well received, but the students, there's so much power put in the students' hands because they have that instant feedback and then the resources to go. I can't take all the credit, for sure, not at even half of it, because it all goes to the resource that we're allowed to use this year, which has just been amazing. The only credit that I feel like I can take, if anything, is having rockstar students. They are pretty darn awesome. They do a good job. My big initial step into more blended is my purpose, my why. And I was really focused on student engagement and being less in charge of that environment. I wanted to be the person that I could walk around and help students and see more of the activity in their hands. And so knowing I wanted that, I was able to use the technology to help create that experience. And so station rotation was a way for me to do that. And also differentiation is just something that I am pretty passionate about. I'm not great at it. I have a lot to learn about it, but I like the idea of pushing kids who need to be pushed, and then helping those students. And in math especially, there are lots of students that need that help. And I feel like you get varying levels of that within the math classroom. So my big step into this whole blended station rotation, all of that came from just my why, my purpose, creating a more student engaged, student empowered classroom. Start with something small. Don't make it more work. Make it something that has a payout. So if it's working towards an end goal that you have a desire to achieve, then it's not as overwhelming, I think, as sometimes when you first initially begin the process. It can feel like a lot. It can feel overwhelming to determine what is worth putting effort into or not. So kind of figuring out what makes sense in your classroom, because every teacher is so unique. Well, it's constantly changing. I mean, this year was the first year that we've had that new online textbook. So figuring out how to make that work in the way that I wanted to was a big step this year. Next year, I think my continued focus on collaboration is absolutely paramount. So I really feel like students need to talk math and how to use, what technology pieces encourage that rather than distract from that. And then I think the other thing I already mentioned earlier is that I want to try to get more videos on the computer, do some more Edpuzzle pieces so that students who are gone or struggling can have access to that. Then everything's constantly changing, keeping that in mind, trying new things, keeping it fresh. But yeah, just the formative piece of the computer element is pretty powerful.